Looks like we've got everybody back in. Well, welcome back to webinar 2 of our Foundations to Framework webinar series, Supercharging Your QMS with AI. Justin and I are back again as your hosts for another great session. So Justin, what did you think of yesterday's session with Ashik?
Well, I have to say, every time we talk with Ashik, I think I pick up and learn something new. So I always enjoy chatting with him.
I agree.
Even after I think I kind of know a lot about AI, I always learn something more. I think one thing that kind of stood out to me yesterday was just reinforcing that concept that while AI, it feels like magic. It can do so many things that are just mind-blowing. At its core, it's really just math and probability and statistics. And
Yeah.
so I think understanding that concept and digging into that a little bit more is a good reminder that, again, it's not magic, but it also helps to understand that concept in terms of how it's trained, how it generates responses to help understand how it can be used and maybe where it shouldn't be used in some cases as well. So that's the piece that I enjoyed from yesterday.
Yeah. And I really like that he gave us some examples too, and did some demos, especially when he was talking about the language model. So we were asking about, kind of explain what a large language model is for us and taking us back to, we've been using language models and on our phones for how long, and really kind of explaining that and breaking it down for us. That was really helpful for me to see all of that. And then I really loved that he shared some stuff with ChatGPT too, with the voice feature. I went and played with it a little bit last night, and I hadn't done that before. So, everybody has opportunities to grow and learn more about AI. And as it continues to grow, and it's so great to have experts in the field that can kind of take us on the journey and show us and hold our hands through it when we need it. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun yesterday. It was great talking with Ashik again. So if you had the opportunity yesterday, go ahead and drop a thumbs up in the chat if you got the chance to be with us yesterday and learn some things from Ashik. So we'll kind of go through what we're going to be covering. Yesterday, Ashik laid the groundwork for us with the foundation of AI. And today we're going to really try to focus in on quality management and applying AI to quality management. So as a reminder, your webinar link that you have is good for all 4 sessions. You don't have to re-register or anything. One link will get you into all of these sessions. And all of the recordings and the materials from our guests will all be provided after the series is complete. So you'll be receiving an email with all of that information at the end of the series. Now, if you have any questions during this seminar or webinar, go ahead and use the Q&A, drop it in there. We are going to have a live Q&A toward the end of this session today, and hopefully we can get through all of your questions. So with that, I am excited to say hello and welcome to our experts, our panel here today. We have Garth Conrad, Jennifer Mascioli-Tudor, and Greg Matson. Garth is a seasoned leader in quality operations and engineering, and he is known for his proactive approach to addressing complex challenges across various industries. He is the Vice President of Quality at Flex, and he's led quality initiatives such as transitioning to computer system assurance and implementing the enterprise quality management system. And hint, he's kind of a leader in applying AI and QMS. So we're really lucky to have him here today. And Jennifer is the founder and CEO of JMT Compliance Consulting, and she has over 20 years of experience in quality and regulatory within the pharmaceutical and medical device industries. Jennifer is passionate about building energized, diverse, and inclusive teams who are motivated by a shared mission to transform healthcare. So looking forward to hearing more from you on how we can use AI to do that transformation for healthcare. And Greg is founder and principal of StackSafe, a consulting firm specializing in AI governance, regulatory compliance, and risk management. He helps businesses safely use and develop artificial intelligence systems while staying ahead of evolving regulations from the US, Europe's AI Act, and FDA guidance. So I know yesterday when we were having our conversation with Ashik, we did have a question or two come in related to governance. So Greg, kind of be ready for that. They may be coming your way again today. With that, let's get started.
Well, Lynn, thanks for the introductions for our panelists here today. I'm gonna start with Garth. Garth, I've seen a lot of your posts on LinkedIn. You talk about AI. I know you've done some work with AI at Flex that I'm really curious about. So I would love if you could start us off by just giving us a little overview of how you're using AI and quality at Flex and how did you get things started?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that first of all, you've got to talk about two different categories of AI. AI is a really big subject matter. So the first category, let's talk about predictive AI. Predictive AI is when you take data sets like performance information associated with a manufacturing process or products or whatever it may be. So you've got that historical data, and what you're really trying to do is predict future values. This is sort of a modeling method that's utilized when you do AI-enabled inspections, for example. So you're using automated inspections that are self-generating good and bad or making determinations associated with that. The other thing that predictive AI can be used for is in predictive maintenance associated with equipment. So you look at historical performance associated with the outcomes of a manufacturing process, and then all of the control parameters and values that go in, and you're able to analyze and predict when certain maintenance cycles may need to be done on equipment. So those are a couple of examples of the predictive side. Generative AI is where a lot of people at least focus time on right now or talk about. And the Gen AI portion of things is the large language model. It's where you're able to take sort of the learnings that have come from everything that's out there under the sun and be able to apply it within the context of your quality management system. So things that you can utilize generative AI for are review of quality records. So if you're looking for common errors or defects associated with the records, you can use Gen AI to do those examinations. If you have multiple investigations that have been done across the given subject matter, you can use Gen AI to pull that information together and create a summary associated with everything that's there. We've been using it for a number of other things as well. When we look at things like review of the quality of CAPA or review of procedures for compliance with the regulations. We've even been using it and applying it to things like quality agreements that we have with our customers and looking for content that's in there or problems that may arise within the quality agreement language itself. So there's a number of applications, but I would definitely tell you to think about the context of predictive AI and generative AI because they are two different sort of use cases.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, what a diverse set of opportunities you've already outlined. I'm also curious, it's a big leap to get into AI, especially in a quality management system, which is regulated, and folks, obviously, rightly so, are very prescriptive about what they do and who's allowed to do certain things. How did you get folks started? How did you get people to start on this journey?
Yeah, so you know that is difficult. A lot of times people have these mental mindsets or this model that, you know, they can do it in that industry, but you can't do it in medical device. You can't apply it here. And I would tell you that's really not the case. When you look at things like predictive AI, where you're using data or information to predict future performance of either products or processes that you have, that's really no different than any other manufacturing process that you've established. So you can create validation models that will go in and ensure that the outcomes that you're looking for are controlled in a manner that's appropriate. So run it through your normal processes for assessment. And really to get started, it's about pushing teams to try. You see a lot of stuff that's out there. Everyone thinks it's a great idea, but it's really just about going and trying it the first time. On the generative AI side, the thing I would tell you to do, the biggest concern on the Gen AI side is probably more around privacy of information or data. You know, a lot of people want to go out and use something like ChatGPT. The problem is, are you going to expose information within your company to that public model where other people can see it or get information associated with it. And that becomes a little bit more difficult. But if you really look at the tool sets that are out there today, they even give you some opportunities to how you can privatize that use or that search functionality, which then allows you to use data within your company and actually analyze it and run forward and begin training your personnel on how to do it. But how do you get started? You just start. I hate to say it. It's don't be scared anymore. Go out and go do it.
Yeah, you just got to take the first step and take a leap sometimes. Love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So, question for Jennifer and Greg. You both are working in your consulting and work with various different organizations. What have you seen in the organizations? How are they using AI?
I mean, I'm happy to start, and I'm just going to use Garth as a springboard because, you really highlighted some of the key differentiations that we're seeing. So you have technology where you're seeing advancements in technology on the medical device side, where you are seeing predictive analytics. You're seeing AI now sort of as a bolt-on to maybe an older technology like imaging. And so you're starting to see those advancements, and that's very exciting. What I'm not seeing, to Garth's point, is this leap into how do we optimize on the quality and regulatory side. And so there seems to be this trepidation in terms of how do we go from paper to an EQMS that's somewhat still antiquated, in my opinion, because it doesn't have all the feature functionality that I would love to see, to how to use generative AI to really then optimize and really derive really good data and rich information so you can make quicker decisions. It's not like you're replacing people, you're just optimizing their potential to do work in a more efficient way. So again, the two buckets that I'm seeing is technology is awesome. We're seeing great innovation in that space. I'm still struggling to see why we're not seeing at least some, quick innovation on the quality side, which is why I'm so excited to have these conversations today.
So Jennifer, you'd like to see different things. Do you have some examples of what you're kind of hoping will come out as, people get more into using AI and QMS?
Yeah, I mean, think about all the pain points. So I've led big organizations as well, and we struggle to collect data from the public domain. If we think about FDA, they publish so much information on a regular basis that we can basically data mine. But how do you data mine that? You have to extrapolate an Excel spreadsheet that contains thousands of data entries, and then you have to go and essentially mine the data manually. And so the effort really sometimes doesn't equal the benefit. So many times companies kind of mothball it. They don't do it because it's too much work. If you actually are able to utilize a tool to where you can download some of this information at a click, and now you have access to this data. Again, it's not like you're just pulling the data and presenting it. You still have to synthesize, collate, evaluate it. But the access and sort of the certainty around the data collection is so much quicker. So I just see it as, if not now, then when. And I agree with Garth. Like, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get some change agents across the quality and regulatory space, and let's just have at it. Like, there's so much opportunity.
Yeah. I've heard it from a few different startups as well, just opportunities because there is so much data that they need to gather, like you said, in public domains, and they're spending thousands of hours to do that.
Yeah.
And if you can do it in a click, that's brilliant.
And also just to put a finer point on what Garth said in terms of proactive quality. I mean, there are new guidance documents, new regulations. There are things happening on the compliance side that we're tracking. Why not, as an organization, pull that data proactively so we can mitigate it before it actually happens? So again, the benefits really outweigh the risks, in my opinion. You just have to start.
Love it. Greg, how about you? What have you been seeing with the companies that you've been working with?
Yeah, so I'd say about 90% of the companies that I've been interacting and working with are using the frontier models. So they're using Claude, Copilot, ChatGPT, using these as kind of a brainstorming assistant, summarizing documents, finding patterns in documents, uploading large PDFs to talk to, so kind of a talk to document. For instance, Europe's AI Act is 458 pages. So to be able to actually talk to the document directly instead of just control find and kind of trying to find keywords, has been a really easy, use of these large language models. And then I've also seen, some companies play around with scenario planning and game theory. So based on my email conversations and some financial documents, how do you think a customer or vendor would respond to a price increase? How would a partner of ours respond to a cost improvement program? So that's something that kind of brings in more of kind of the emotional side too of this has kind of been our conversations. Can you kind of understand how the other person is feeling? And there's still some debate on whether AI can understand human emotion and hallucinations around that. But for using those frontier models and chat-based models, that's been kind of a neat thing I've seen. I think probably the most interesting use of AI in life science has been a company that's using it to create surgery simulation software. So they're using generative AI to create, anatomical pathways. They can generate adverse events during this, surgery, the mock surgery. So you think about it like the game of Operation, but it's 3D, and every time you play it, it's a little bit different. And it's pretty neat. This company I was talking with, so they're generating the pathways. So let's say you're doing a tissue biopsy or something. As the surgeon is doing this mock surgery, the data is being collected on how the surgeon is reacting and performing the operation. And so an AI model is actually using that data to train for robotic surgery. So it's kind of like an AI sandwich. Both the inputs and outputs are using and training on machine learning. And I thought that was very neat.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
really incredible. And that's incredible to hear, where that is currently within the medical device industry. And then we're a little bit behind on the quality management side, I would say, right?
Right, right. That's definitely something, my background is in med device. I've done a lot of work in the quality and supplier engineering. And, let's say you have a supplier you've been working with for 20 years. You may have hundreds of CAPAs, hundreds of scars with that supplier. And so, when a nonconformance pops up and having to review those documents one by one, I think there's definitely an opportunity to use artificial intelligence to analyze all documents at once and help find patterns. And that's just something that I haven't really seen work very well up until now at companies.
Right.
Mhm.
Interesting. So Jennifer, I'm going to come back to you. You were an executive before starting your consulting firm, and I'm sure you
Mhm.
struggle with and seeing all sorts of new things that come up, and people come to you on your team and say, "I got this great new idea. We got to go do it." And you've had to prioritize, think about how you prioritize different opportunities, but also what the benefits can be, because that's generally why we do projects, is because it brings a benefit to the organization. So when you think about AI, how do you think about the benefits it can bring, and how do you kind of think about prioritization of that?
Great question. I think we're all seeing that we're expecting to do more with less, right? So resources are shrinking to some degree, or we're getting inundated with projects. And Garth, you're probably seeing that as well. And so really the important thing from an executive level perspective is to prioritize without burning out. And so we as executives, we in the leadership team need to make sure that we're providing the tools to ensure that the teams are successful. So, Greg mentioned it, he hit upon it, as did Garth, in terms of these optimization opportunities. So I think about remediation, and many organizations are in a remediation mode because we didn't build quality in early enough to actually mitigate future issues. So I think we have two buckets happening. We have remediation and we have proactive quality. My belief is that by applying some of these new tools, you can actually address both components and stay more in the proactive quality. The challenge is you have to have a value proposition and you have to tag some sort of return to demonstrate the value to a non-quality person. So I think for us on the call, each of the panelists, I believe, have been in quality and regulatory. So I think for us, it's sort of a no-brainer. It's very intuitive because we've seen the pains of doing the manual pull The challenge is to champion that across the organization and to really get believers outside of quality regulatory, right? Because we want to show operation efficiencies, we want to show supply chain continuity, innovation spending and R&D. And so I always think cost of poor quality, cost of quality, if you weave in the use of these tools into some of those calculations, I think it's an easy sell. But again, the work has to be done in order to have those proof points. So all achievable, all doable, but we have an obligation to spend the time to have those talk tracks and make sure they come to realization.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, we have, you mentioned cost of poor quality, and there are certainly metrics in the organization that I think could probably be leveraged for a new use case, but still utilizing some of that old framework that we've utilized in the past to provide an ROI and hopefully provide justification for these new capabilities. Yeah.
And not every organization tracks cost of poor quality or cost of quality. Garth, you and I worked at Medtronic. One of the key indicators when I was at Medtronic, and this was years ago, was we always had a cost of quality or cost of poor quality dashboard as part of our management review. And that data, to collate that data and present that one slide took hours of time.
Oh.
So, there's a perfect example of optimizing and sort of automating something that's super valuable to the business, but not everyone does it because the data mining takes so long to do.
That's a great example that you pulled out with management review. Think about, and of course, a big company like Medtronic, but think about the amount of work that goes into a, annual or twice a year management review, and the number of people and time and slides and analysis and everything that goes into that. There's a great opportunity there for sure to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Could not agree more.
I want to circle back to Garth. One of the things that Jennifer was mentioning was the ROI. So any tips or tricks that you may have, you've been able to kind of build that business case for you, anything that you could share with quality leaders on how to go about it?
Yeah, I think the thing I would hit on that Jennifer was saying was about efficiencies. We're driving for efficiencies. And if you take that and you apply it internally, you look at what you're doing, you look at the things that you've done, not only around efficiency, but consistency, and talking more about your processes, not the product outcomes. Product outcomes, we've got a lot of tools that we utilize and things along those lines. But I'm talking about your QMS processes that you're operating. So one example, think about something like a review of a nonconformance. You have somebody that's generating it, doing investigations, summarizing content, pulling everything together, and then it goes to a host of people for review. How many times do you go through that review cycle? One and only one time. Now, a challenge for us, like for Flex, one of the ways that we created that sort of that proposition or that use case of moving forward was we deal with a lot of OEMs within medical device. So all of the large medical device customers are our customers. And the challenge is anytime that we run into a quality issue, we're interacting with our customer and we're providing information to them. So this review cycle of nonconformances and CAPAs and things along those lines not only occurs internally within Flex, but it occurs with our customers as well. So when we look at those interactions, how many times do we send something to a customer that ends up coming back and having to be reworked, having to redo an investigation associated with something or look for other content that's out there? So our use case was pretty simple in terms of our first applications. It was, how do we improve that? And when you look globally, the other challenge that we have is we have manufacturing sites globally. Most of our content that we have is written in English, but a lot of times English is their second language or third language or whatever it may be. So we've got challenge with conversion of content from sort of one mental model that you're in to another that goes down on paper. So we were able to apply generative AI or the LM models to review content, correct problems like grammar and those basic things that are there, but also identify gaps in content prior to ever going through a review cycle. Now, when you start talking about that, and applying that to what you're doing broadly across multiple locations, you gain efficiencies with your personnel because you're not going through the review cycles. And you can translate that into more time available to do other work, which then has an ROI that comes back to it. So that's sort of the mental model to begin thinking about how you can drive use of these tools to really create a business case for that return on investment. So,
did you do some time studies to be able to identify?
We didn't do time studies. So like I gave as a first example, in terms of interaction with our customers, one of the things that we look at is what's our first pass acceptance of content. So that's a pretty easy measurement when you're going back and forth with your customers related to a particular event or things along those lines. So we look at how we can drive improvement that's there. That then translates into engineering time and work content that goes into redoing things that you've done before.
Great.
Greg, I'm curious to pick your brain a little bit about kind of AI governance and how this is used big picture. Everyone's heard, I assume, some stories in the news about AI making mistakes, some of them humorous and some of them not so humorous. And certainly in our industry, making sure that we make good decisions based on good data is of paramount importance. So I'm curious from your perspective, like how do you govern this? How should people think about this as they're implementing these systems?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first thing I always recommend is to complete a AI maturity assessment. So understanding where you're using AI and your company, who's using it, is it internal employees, customers, both? What policies do you have in place? What regulations do you need to comply with? What licenses are we using? Are we using frontier models with enterprise or teams or pro version? And then perform a risk assessment. So NIST has a really good risk mapping framework. MIT just came out with, I think, a database of over 800 AI specific risks that could be applicable to your use case, whether it's quality management, drug development, med device development. For instance, if you're using it you're using an assistant to write a DFU. Are you using it to outline the DFU? Are you using it to review, edit after it's written? Where is there a human at the end of the line before it goes to production? So when you're determining kind of what framework or governance program you want in place, it doesn't have to be this bloated program. You can implement a GRC light framework. So, I'd start looking at AI as, use it as an assistant. So like an audit assistant, DHR, record reviewer. And once you get comfortable and have those policies and processes in place, then you can integrate it more into your business, use it more as kind of a coworker or a brainstormer. And then, AI governance it's not as complex as some companies make it out to be. There's really only 6 parts. You've got your structure and leadership. So who's in charge of kind of leading the AI revolution and making sure that this program stays in place, roles and responsibilities. You've got your policies, your procedures, and your processes so you can dial things in. You've got your risk management, regulatory compliance, training, and then if you want to move to the next step, there's audit, and there's a new ISO 42001, which is the AI management system. And that ISO standard really weaves in with some of the state legislation we've been seeing, and then also Europe's AI Act. So just kind of understanding, some of those regulations and understanding where your artificial intelligence use cases are and understanding kind of the risks, then you can kind of develop that risk management and governance program around, specifically what you're using. So you don't have this bloated program and you're not on that kind of a skeleton program. You have something that's pretty robust in place. And then it gives employees and leadership, it gives them some familiarity and understanding that this is how far we can go with AI and this is kind of our box we can play around in. It makes people a little bit more comfortable in the organization.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting you mentioned, keeping a human in the loop for all decision making, especially as a first step. And I couldn't agree more with that concept, especially as you think about, AI is not some supercomputer that we just send off to do everything for us. That's certainly not the way I utilize it. Most folks you should be utilizing it. Should be an assistant to help you do your job better and faster with better quality, not necessarily hand the keys over to someone else. Certainly not at this point. And I'm not sure if most folks would be comfortable with that in the future either. And then maybe just one quick follow-up, in terms of, again, like how you get started with something like this. If you wanted to implement, like, let's just say even one AI tool into your workflow, do you need that full governance structure, or is there a light version you can start with to help kind of get you going, but still do it in a responsible way?
Yeah, I would say, start with a pilot program. Start with kind of your AI Tiger team and, pull in everything your company or everything that your job function is doing right now that's time consuming. Not necessarily difficult, but time consuming. And that's where you can start to pull in some of these tools and start kind of from the ground up of how can I make things more efficient? And then as you maybe solidify that pilot program of, we want to use this tool, we want to integrate this company-wide or product-wide, that's when you want to start learning about these frameworks and before moving to production, that's when you want to really have a governance program or even kind of this governance light that I've been talking about in place, so that when you're ready to flip that switch and start using it day to day, you kind of have a structure around it and a governance around it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
If I can add one thing, so you mentioned the time-consuming piece. I would add one more, which is around consistency. So part of the challenge sometimes is you're applying a standard set of activities multiple times across multiple people, and you expect those people to have the same result each time. And the challenge becomes that sometimes you get a little inconsistency from one person to the next. Using a tool like generative AI to go in and do the reviews, you can gain consistency of that same set of information or task work that you're looking at applying.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. I mean, that really feeds into the whole quality mindset we're trying to get to with a lot of the work, is that the quality, we talk a lot about efficiencies, and I'm sure that's what people hear about in the news, but the quality can be dramatically enhanced as well if you take that mindset you kind of talked about.
Yep.
So we've got roughly 10 minutes left. So we'll maybe do another question or two, but then we're going to get to Q&A as well. So I see we have one question kind of queued up that we'll get to in a moment. But if you have anything else that's on your mind, please throw it in there so that we can make some time for it here at the end.
And actually, there's actually a question in the chat as well. So I'm going to throw that out here to the panelists. What are the most common excuses for why companies don't implement AI? And how do you communicate with leadership that drags its heels? Who wants to take it?
I mean, one of the things, so Greg touched upon this, and it just sort of, in my mind, it just sort of thought, I thought to myself, there's so many questions around barrier to entry when you think about AI. And we have budget constraints, right? I talked about resourcing issues earlier. Budget constraints are certainly real for every organization, whether you're a startup, we're seeing funding challenges on the startup side, all the way to large med tech companies. So in my mind, it's really having the appetite to outsource and then build competencies in-house, right? So it's very scary. I mean, Greg just mentioned a whole bunch of regulations that probably very few people are familiar with, but that's why you need to go and outsource subject matter expertise, bring it in-house, leverage those people who really know the space really well, and train your people so that you can build in-house competencies. So what I've observed is that strategy is a little bit lost, because I think there's this sense that you have to build everything in-house, and there's a huge amount of capital that you need to invest up front. And the reality is, and Greg, you mentioned this as well, and I think Garth, you did as well, is start small, like bite sizes. You don't have to boil the ocean and sort of build Rome in a day. You can have incremental improvement that spans over a 2 to 3 year roadmap, but get the roadmap in place and start. Yeah. So that just struck me, Greg, as you were talking, in terms of your Tiger teams and pilot programs and sort of incremental improvements. I think if we can articulate that to leadership, it's a lot more digestible than we have to go from 0 to 100 and spend oodles of money to make it happen. We don't, right? We don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the fact is, this is technology that is continuing to change, right? And if you start now to develop a roadmap that you plan to implement 5 years down the road, it's going to be different. So
Yeah.
you want to start now. You want to start building that ROI now, and get your feet wet. So when you have this really great, full, long situation that you want to be implementing, you're at a position that you can go ahead and get all of the benefits from it. So you won't have to learn everything then. You've already learned all of the basics now, and you just build from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to demystify. I mean, I'm new to AI, quite frankly, just coming into consulting. I had a whole bunch of exposure on the technology side, but not necessarily on the quality side. You just have to demystify it. And so these types of learning and sharing of experiences, I think will help demystify some of the things that we've been seeing.
The other one I'll throw out, and Greg probably knows this better, but I think part of the challenge as well is that people perceive the barrier to entry is higher than what it actually is.
Yeah.
You know, putting a generative AI model in place, putting a frontier model in place with one of the providers that's out there right now is actually not that expensive. And when you look at the ability to begin using it tomorrow, it's not that difficult to get to that stage of things. Now, if you're trying to design product or embed AI into product or the things that you're doing, yeah, it's a bit more complex. But these initial use cases that we're talking about today, there's not a huge barrier to entry to get there. And I just think people don't understand that. They don't understand how to take step one or step two in what they're doing. And because of that, everyone's standing back and saying, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
100%
I think
agree.
another big reason is privacy, data privacy. So
Yep.
rightly so. There's a lot of companies that are worried that their data is going to be uploaded and it's going to be seen by other companies because it has happened before. Looking at OpenAI on this one, OpenAI and a lot of these companies, these frontier model companies, they're amazing machine learning companies, but they're not amazing data security companies. They're getting better, but there is that, is my data going out to the cloud where someone's going to find it in the future, or are we training the model on my data, on my information? And there are ways to use some of these generative artificial intelligence tools without uploading things, right? We're not uploading financial documents. You can have an acceptable use policy saying, here's your job function. You can use it to help write emails. You're not allowed to, copy and paste financial documents. We're not going to use it for coding. So that's a big thing too, is there's, when you start using for coding, where's the IP on writing the code if it came from you and someone else from GitHub who's been uploading their own code. So there's ways you can say, this is when we can use artificial intelligence. And then there are also ways where we can have, on-prem systems, on-premise artificial intelligence models where it's not connected to the internet. So you don't get that, you don't get RAG. You can't necessarily chat and it'll retrieve information from online. So it'll stay offline and all of your company data can stay on site. That is a little bit more expensive to set up, and there's a lot, some maintenance to be aware of. But there are ways to still use AI safely with kind of a pilot program or Tiger team. Yeah, so it's definitely new to a lot of people. It's scary, but there are ways to do it that's safe and kind of get your feet wet.
Yeah, great point. Another question that came through kind of early on, and maybe this one's for Garth, but anyone else is free to chime in. Can you share a little more about how you motivate your team to try these new things without having them feel like you're pushing it on them? A lot of people have concerns about AI, and adoption could be slow just from an overall change management culture perspective. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is lead by example. So if I want people to transition and begin doing something differently, I've got to do it myself and show the benefit associated with it. So that's actually the way that I started, at least the things that we were pushing. But then it's simple tasks. As you begin to change culture or begin to change sort of the direction that people go, it's simple things along the lines of, you ask the question during a review, have you run that through Gen AI? Have you run it through our standard prompt model that we have and analyzed it to understand if there's any challenges that are in it? And if the answer comes back no, You ask the people to go do it, and they learn. And I think you begin to work that into your just standard work that you're doing within the organization. I think the other big thing about changing culture or changing how people adopt things is training or teaching. Everyone knows about AI. It's out there. It's every email or every advertisement that you see online. But I can tell you, we spend half an hour going through training of our personnel to teach them the things that they can do with the prompts that we've created. And the lights go off in their head. They look at it and say, this is going to make my life easier. I can do that. That's simple. That's easy. I can apply that. So showing them how to do it helps a lot in terms of removing that barrier, removing that angst about doing something different.
Great idea. I mean, what you just said there reminds me of something that Lynn and I talk about all the time is how do we let engineers be engineers again, right? And that's something I always hear as a leader. I didn't go to school for this. I want to be an engineer. Well, use these tools to help you speed up some of these things that you don't enjoy doing so you can focus on the things that are really value added that our customers want us to do, which is drive solutions, drive improvements, and make things better.
I think the other thing too, from a culture perspective, and I'm just talking specifically around quality and regulatory perceptions, is many times the quality and regulatory functions are seen as either bottleneck or bureaucratic or really not part of the solution. And I strongly believe that, as quality and regulatory become more familiar with these practices and processes, we can actually come to the table with a different landscape, a different mindset, and offer different considerations for R&D teams, operation teams, you name it. So I think it changes the regulatory and quality discipline and landscape in such a positive way, because now we can be part of the solution in terms of mining data, mining stuff that's happening out in the regulatory landscape and bringing it back to the organization proactively. So I just think, again, so much benefit for the organization, but also changing perhaps the perception of, old school quality regulatory as well.
Yeah, great point.
I'm going to ask one more quick question here, and this is just part of something that someone posted in the Q&A. How do you make the case to leadership for investing in AI when the current processes are already working?
Well, for me, it's continuous improvement. I mean, you look at it, there's no process that's out there that's perfect. If you had a perfect process, you probably wouldn't have people left in it anymore. So that there's always the opportunity to do something better, do something different, do it more efficiently, do it more consistently, whatever it may be. It's whatever the driver is that you have as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. As a company, you shouldn't be going out and buying, 5,000 seats of one software without doing kind of a trial. So do a trial period with your team, with your pilot group, who are interested in artificial intelligence, who are interested in learning new things and learning new software from different functions. Have them get in a room, use 5 or 6 different tools, and do time studies. See how much faster they're doing their current process. And sometimes you might have a tool that's like, it takes more time and you're like, all right, kill that. We're not going to use it. So do that study and kind of do a prototype of a bunch of different tools, and then bring that to the table saying, we reduced this time by an hour. It typically takes 6. Now it only took us 5 hours to grab all this data and organize it and find patterns in the data. And then take that to your team and say, I think we should, bring this company wide because it's going to save us X amount of dollars. You can do that internally.
And Greg, why that's so important, just quickly, is now you create change agents. So, Garth, you mentioned that you're leading by example, but if you're the only one that's championing it, it's going to be really hard to adopt. So, my philosophy is always bring in a small team that will be your change agents, so that in a room that perhaps you're not in, they're still advocating and pushing and sharing the benefits, right? So I think that strategy is really, really sound.
Well, thank you to our 3 fabulous panelists. We really appreciate everything that you guys were able to share with us today. If you want to learn more about the work that they are all doing, you're welcome to go to their websites. You'll have this information get sent to you, so you'll be able to reach out to them directly. And then we also want to remind you that webinar 3 is coming up on Monday. And we're excited to be sharing live demos of both quality and regulatory AI tools. So don't miss it. You'll get to see some use cases in action. So looking forward to seeing you on Monday. Thanks, everyone.